actually hit the door.
Yeah, get the door. You guys want to move? There we go. Perfect.
Can you see? Good.
This is good, right? The lighting's okay?
That's good. You guys look good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish I would have hair.
I got you here.
Alright guys, hey. Master Sergeant Terrence, BSRF Top 3. I want to introduce Chief Master Sergeant Bass, Master Sergeant Stevens, and Master Sergeant Gaudio. Gentlemen, the show is yours.
Alright. Okay. Alrighty, welcome everybody to the Facebook Live Mentor of the Month. I'd like to thank the recruiting service Top 3 for having me here, so I have the opportunity to interview Chief Bass here. Command Chief, 2nd Air Force here, Keesler Air Force Base. So everybody on the conference call, if you wouldn't mind, once you call in, please mute your phones. We don't really need to hear conversations in the background while we're trying to go through this. So, Chief Bass, nice to see you. How you doing?
Nice to see you as well.
Okay. So let's start off with a little question about yourself.
All right.
You know, so a little bit about yourself, primary AFSC, all that good stuff. So give me a short little background.
Very good. First of all, thank you to everybody who's online and to the recruiting services Top 3. What a fun opportunity to be able to chat with you guys. And I will have to admit, this is my first time going live. So this is pretty cool because I'm a little bit scared going live because we can't go back.
No, we can't edit.
And so nobody for the next hour can tweet anything or Facebook anything that I said, especially if it's wrong. No, I'm joking. So we're gonna have fun.
Yep.
So a little bit about me, Joe Bass. I've been serving in the Air Force for about 26 years. Not bad because I thought I was just gonna do 4 years. And my 4-year mark, I needed to pay off my Honda Civic, so I stayed in for another 8 years. And about the 8-year mark, and after a couple deployments, I really started to love what I do, and I realized that the Air Force, you know, I'm benefiting more from just the purpose of serving more than I came in to initially get from the Air Force. And I initially came in from the Air Force from Mililani, Hawaii, where I got recruited there. I came in open general, so I was a aviation resource manager.
Nice.
My first duty station was at Pope Air Force Base. Everybody called it No Hope Pope or Vietnam and all that good stuff. But I will tell you that there's a ton of hope at Pope, and I learned just a tremendous amount of what it means to be part of an Air Force family, and really kind of what the mission is, and a lot of that from the different organizations that I was part of at Pope and Fort Bragg. From there, I spent about 5 years in Germany. It was a rough gig at Ramstein, you know. Did my primary duties there, got an assignment back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, so I spent half of my career in Air Force Special Operations Command and on the Joint Special Operations Command team. Got orders back to Germany again, so really 2 duty assignments, or 2 locations rather. Got the privilege to serve as a command chief at Goodfellow Air Force Base. I did that for about 14 months, and then got my first assignment to the Pentagon. So I was at the Pentagon, which was my assignment prior to 2nd Air Force. I was the chief of PME. And so I like to share with people that I love serving with our current Chief Master in the Air Force, AKA the Enlisted Jesus, but I remind him all the time that he didn't become Enlisted Jesus till the PME changes, so people can call me Mary because I did all behind the scenes stuff. But anyway, had a great time at the Pentagon for 2 years, slaying policy dragons, and then was privileged enough to get an assignment here at 2nd Air Force, where we get to help shape the future of our Air Force. And obviously that it is a direct reflection from the recruits and trainees that you're sending us. So very grateful for the opportunity again to be here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And my, real quick, and my biggest prize and appreciation really goes out to my family. So I have a phenomenal husband, 27-year Army retiree, so he was an Army First Sergeant. And we have 2 kiddos, one in college and then a 12-year-old. So they keep us pretty busy.
Oh wow, wow, that yeah. So
yes.
that's a busy busy lifestyle, especially being the second Air Force Command Chief.
Yeah.
So some of the responsibilities of you. So what do you do right now? Like day to day. Take us through a day to day for the second.
So day to day. Man, that's kind of hard. My 12-year-old asked me that. Mom, what do you do? And I have to think about that one. So I will tell you, I'm on the road a lot. Second Air Force trains 93% of all airmen that come into our Air Force. And so airmen who go through BMT, who go through initial skills tech training at one of our 5 wings, or one of our over 70 detachments. And so we cover down again on training 93% of the Air Force. So super busy going out, visiting a lot of our sites and detachments, looking at how can we influence who we're growing in today's Air Force, and really how do we grow strong, ready airmen to support the fight for the next 10, 15, 20 years from now. On a day-to-day, kind of my battle rhythm, I'll tell you, I know you guys asked me earlier, you know, why did I join the Air Force, and we might talk about that later, but my battle rhythm starts about 4:30, 5 in the morning, and I'll get up and do some PT and kind of do some reflection time, and then come to work and spend time at work between 7:30 and then probably 1700, and then the rest of the time is family time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Gotta have that's important.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to that then. Let's go back to why you joined. You brought it up. So why did you join the Air Force over the Army?
Yeah.
You talk about.
Yeah. So my dad was in the Army. He was a warrant officer serving in the Army. I watched him get up in the morning to PT at 5 in the morning, and I thought, as a young 17-year-old, there is no way that that's gonna be me. So never considered the Army at all. But then also as an Army brat, you know, anytime we hung out with other military kids, you know, we kind of lived in the not so great houses on the Army side, and then we'd see the kids who lived in the on the Air Force installations, and they had a great quality of life. So Air Force was just a natural attraction for me. And really, I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, so I joined so that I could get my GI Bill and get an education and get out in 4 years.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what we're pushing to all our kids as well, making sure that our applicants know that, hey, this stuff is out there.
Yes.
Just don't be in debt.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want you to be in debt. At the end of it.
And so the real challenge is then, how do we keep those applicants in? So that's what I want to get after as a leader, is how do we grab somebody like me who just says, hey, I'm going to join for 4 years, and how do we keep them excited about service that they want to stay in?
Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the training. So right now the training climate has changed. How has it changed with the past few years with the development, innovation, and stuff like that?
Sure. So we are changing a lot within Second Air Force and within ATC on how we train and develop airmen today. However, I would tell you, I don't think we're changing fast enough. This is not an Air Force that I came in 26 years ago. If our training classrooms and the methodologies from which we teach and instruct are the same ways than it was 26 years ago, then we're probably wrong. If you look at technology nowadays, we have to capitalize on that, whether that means artificial intelligence and all the other technology that we can capitalize on. We have to do that to grab the 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are coming in today's Air Force and teaching them cutting edge technology so that we can continue growing the Air Force that we need. So we are evolving our training, and we still have room to grow. So my boss is, you know, busy fighting the fight to make sure that we have the resources to do that, which is exceedingly hard based on today's kind of global environment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I can see how we do need to strive to always be ahead of the game.
Yeah.
That's what we preach with a lot of our schools as well. So we need that innovation. We need that technology. This is the what we joke around the shop and at the house with my wife. This is the generation of life hacks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've been doing the same thing for years and years, and then we watch a video that says, "Wow, we did it wrong our whole life." So you know, this is you talk about that. We need that to step out. So as far as your purpose in the Air Force, could you talk about that just a little bit?
Man, you went deep real quick.
Yeah,
I felt like I
kinda
needed to
softened
get
it.
built up on that.
Mhm.
Okay, so purpose. I will tell you right away. My worldview when it comes to whom serves who is you know, kind of the upside down triangle, if you will. So I believe that, you know, as the 2nd Air Force Command Chief, my job and my role is to serve our airmen. And so that's my position and that's my purpose in life, so that I could remove barriers and things that are preventing the airmen who work in 2nd Air Force from being able to do their jobs. Removing barriers and things that are getting away of the technology and the growth that we need within 2nd Air Force for the trainees that you're giving us to thrive in our environments. So my purpose is to serve my teammates.
Absolutely. Yeah. So through your career, has your purpose, has it changed? Not purpose, I guess, the phases. Have you starting to see through the phases? At what point did it say, this is it, this was my calling, you know?
Yeah.
Do you remember that exact time, or did it kind of gradually?
So I don't think I ever had the epiphany moment that I've heard some leaders share that they've had. At my 4-year mark, again, I was only coming to do 4 years, and at the 4-year mark, I was like, well, dang, I gotta pay for a Honda Civic. So I re-enlisted, the right reasons, right?
Yeah.
And then had been on some deployments. And when you know, for anybody who hasn't been on deployment, you really have to, you know, you trained, you know, how you fight. And so going on those deployments, being in some of the organizations that I got a chance to be part of early in my career, Special Tactics being one of them, it kind of really shapes your thought process on why we even serve, you know, and the bigger, broader picture of what it means to serve in any service. And so probably about the 8-year mark, I really joined the Air Force.
Okay.
So I joined, you know, in 1993, but about the 8-year mark is really when I started, when I feel like I joined the Air Force. And then I was just having fun. I was seeing the world, getting, you know, I spent a majority of my time overseas, so I got a chance to see the world, have fun doing what I do. And then probably when I became a senior NCO, especially senior master sergeant level, I started to realize, man, what an opportunity to impact people around me. And that's when I started to see a greater purpose of serving.
Okay, yeah, that's a good line there.
A journey.
A journey.
Yes.
Journey. So through this time, through your career, your storied career, there had to have been some kind of adversities. And do you remember one special adversity that you broke through, or barrier that you felt like you needed to get through, that kind of catapulted to that next thing?
So I don't know that I had one specific adversity. I think I've had a few. And so if I had to classify adversities, those might be the people that you work with, you know, so whether that's a boss or a coworker. And so, you know, within my career, I've had phenomenal leaders, and then some who were, in my mind, you know, not that phenomenal. And in fact, I probably learned more from those folks than I did from the other ones, because I learned, hey man, this is how this made me feel, and I don't know that I appreciated that. So those are some of the adversities that I had. And what I learned is, you know, we go through these seasons of work with folks like that, who they're testing your character and that EQ, and you've got to learn to develop that. And so for that reason, it's good to go through those adversities. The other adversity perhaps that I might talk about is yourself. And so, you know, when people always say, hey Chief, you know, what's your glass ceiling, or what was your biggest challenge? I'm like, my biggest challenge was me. And kind of, you know, not necessarily giving myself the credit that I knew that, you know, I had worked hard, I know my stuff, I know my business, and I didn't always see me as a strategic level leader. So my biggest challenge was fighting through my own emotions, saying, yeah, you've worked hard, you know how to get there, so trust in me.
Okay, all right, speaking of you, okay,
Yes.
this is a question we all have, okay, through all the recruiting services, through every job really, the Air Force, the DoD, just life in general. They ask a lot of.
the CDC and all that stuff. So through my journey, my balance has gotten a lot better because I've realized that I have to prioritize work and I have to prioritize my family.
Okay.
And so that's a pretty big thing. I think I do that well. See, when it comes to important stuff with the kiddos, I tell teachers, you know, the very first day of school, I won't be at a lot of stuff because I'm not here a lot. But anything that's big, y'all need to tell me in advance. I also make sure that I balance my calendar, that what's important is reflected on my calendar. And so I'll have lunch with my kiddo on the calendar. They don't always like it the older they get. They're like, geez, Mom, you know, quit coming to school. But anyway, but I put in that time and I take my leave. I enjoy leave. In fact, I'm going to the Bahamas in like a few days. So I take leave and then I get reset. And it's, I don't know that it's ever balanced, but I do a reset and I get back on track.
Speaking of leave and stuff, do you ever go back home?
Back to Hawaii?
Hawaii?
So years ago, we're trying to figure out how to get back soon.
Exactly.
Yes.
Hawaii, I've heard, is very beautiful.
It is beautiful.
I've got to find a way to get there as well. So let's go back to when you were a tech sergeant. You said it was a little tough. So you were in charge of a shift. I'm sure you was in CLC, maybe doing some superintendent duties. I'm almost positive.
Yeah.
And
Oh, hold on real quick. I think we're gonna do an audible on Facebook Live, people. Hold on just one second.
Room touch up.
look, carry on, please.
Alrighty. Hey, sir. So we're Facebook Living, but I wanted to do an audible and surprise you guys with somebody who makes me a better leader. And so right now we've got my wingman and my battle buddy, Major General Tim Leahy.
Promote me, I'm okay with that.
That's right. So with that said, since you guys wanted to chat with me about leadership and all that good stuff, I thought I've got to bring my wingman here. And so with that, we're going to take about 15 minutes and talk to my boss and chat with him about whatever's on our hearts and minds. But sir, I'm going to kick it off with a question to you on tell me why you feel like the enlisted corps is so important in our Air Force, and perhaps even some personal stories on how the enlisted corps has impacted you and your growth as a general officer.
Okay, so this could be a 2-day conversation.
Yes, sir.
So let me give you a very early point in my life, and then I'll tell you where I think the NCO Corps needs to be. So when I was a young lieutenant, I'm a pilot by trade. When I was a young lieutenant, my first assignment was in Alaska, and I started out flying helicopters. And we were flying a mission up at Eielson Air Force Base, and I'm a brand new to the unit, just came through flight training. I'm with a senior aircraft commander, a captain. I'm a young lieutenant, and I had a flight engineer, Master Sergeant Bobby Hook, who sits in the center seat between the two pilots. Now, flying an instrument approach is an ILS. You got to line up these two lines. It's actually challenging in a helicopter, very challenging for a young pilot. So I'm flying this approach, and I sort of have it nailed. So I'm thinking, I'm patting myself on the back, I'm looking really good, I'm making this approach look good. And then the aircraft spins to the right 90 degrees and snaps back. In a helicopter, that means the tail rotor is about to go, and you have to enter auto rotation immediately or the airplane will go out of control and you'll all die. So it's pretty significant, and I'm like, whoa, that was not me. The only way to do it is to step on the rudder pedals, which I didn't do. And I'm going, that's not me. And the aircraft commander goes, what is wrong with you, LT? You know, I mean, are you sure you made it through flight school? You know, can't you fly an airplane? And so anyway, this happens like four more times, and I'm telling him, it's not me. I'm telling you, there's something wrong with this airplane. We need to get it on the ground. We're gonna die. You know, no, you're just a crappy pilot. So we land the airplane. The aircraft commander takes control. He picks up to a hover. He goes, there's nothing wrong with this airplane. Sets it back down. And now I'm sitting there starting to second guess myself. Did I really do that? And Master Sergeant Bobby Hoke, flight engineer, who had actually grown up in Vietnam. He goes, hey LT, let me show you something. If I lean back in my seat, I can reach up into the cabin. I can grab the tail rotor cables and I can pull down on them. If I do that, it'll put an input into the tail rotor and make the aircraft spin 90 degrees. So I'm sitting there with my mouth wide open. Why would you do that to me? And he goes, LT, leadership lesson number 1. Take care of your NCOs and they'll take care of you. Screw over your NCOs and they'll screw over you. He used much more flyover language than screw over. Master Sergeant Bobby Hoke and Master Sergeant Mike Ringler went on to teach young Lieutenant Leahy 20 lessons on leadership that I have never forgotten to this day, and were 20 lessons that were more important, more to the heart, and more allowed you to lead than any I've ever learned from any officer in my entire Air Force career. So my point is, as I tell every NCO, is your job is to not just grow young NCOs. Your job is to grow young officers. Because there's 3 elements of knowledge: training, education, and experience. And an officer coming into the system might have more education, might not, but might have more education than the average enlisted troop. Probably has a lot less training and clearly has a lot less experience. So 2 of the critical components of knowledge generally an NCO has that a young officer does not, even a senior officer sometimes. So I always say a critical part of our NCO Corps is helping grow leaders, and that includes the officer corps. So I always take that as a critical piece, because I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for Master Sergeant Bobby Hoke and Master Sergeant Mike Ringler. The other piece that we absolutely have to be understanding, and you know, so for background, I'm a career special operations officer. I spent almost my entire Air Force career in special operations, which means I've traveled all around the globe, mostly to crappy places, and engaged with third world militaries and first world militaries on operations, some training, some real. And here's what I've noticed. Here's a fact that all of us probably know, but sometimes we forget. Roughly 85% of the United States Air Force is enlisted, which means who's running the Air Force?
The enlisted.
You know, so the statement is, well, the backbone of the Air Force is the enlisted corps. I actually believe that. Now, I'm here to tell you, I've run across many officers that know how to say it, but they don't believe it. I believe it because I've lived it. So when you travel and you work with third world militaries, you find something really obvious. They don't either have an enlisted corps or an NCO corps, or it's not a professional NCO corps. So some of our allies who are pretty capable, unless an officer tells them to do something, they don't do it, even though they know what they could or should do, because they can be held accountable and punished severely by an officer. And most of that officer corps and those kind of militaries are officers because of birthright, who their family is, how connected they are, not because of capacity or capability. So you have people that are telling others how to operate, and they're not really qualified to do it. And those that probably know how to do it have a culture of, I will not go against that side of my country because the punishment will be severe. If we allow our military to degenerate into that, we have a third world military. Here's the difference between the United States NCO Corps and a first world NCO Corps, which I'm talking our Australian, our British, our French, our allies who we generally look at and think are very capable militaries. Having spent a lot of time working with them, what I find is they have professional NCO Corps. The difference is they don't necessarily believe their NCO Corps are leaders. They're professional, they're allowed to do certain things, but they don't see them as being leaders. We do. We have. I think at times we're starting to strain that. And that's been one of my biggest areas of trying to reinstate since I've been at 2nd Air Force. And that is to say, you need to empower the NCO Corps to not be NCOs, but to be leaders. And step back and let them execute. Now, will they make mistakes? Yes. Will an officer make mistakes? Yes. Will the Chief of Staff of the Air Force make mistakes? Yes. How do you learn? We learn from our mistakes. So you need to step back at all ranks and let people experiment, let people try, unless it's going to end in loss of life, limb, or eyesight, let them go. And go, all right, well, how did that work out? Because if it doesn't work out, they'll be the first to know and come up with reasons to say, yeah, now I know why you were saying that, or you're right, or we probably could have did it a little bit better. But if they're simply waiting for you to tell them the answer, or they're not going to move out on their own initiative until you give them very clear and specific guidance, we are driving to be in a third world military. And with 85% of the force being enlisted, we're in a world of hurt. So I'm a huge believer that for us to maintain the most capable Air Force, we have to have a professional NCO Corps that sees themselves and execute as leaders all the time. Or we are driving towards a third world military. And in my humble opinion, pick your time frame, last 5 years, last 8 years, last 10 years, we've allowed a degree of risk aversion to come into our Air Force at all levels that are forcing people or allowing people to not make decisions at the level they should, and they're pushing it to the next level, they're pushing it to the next level. So when I first walked into 2nd Air Force, no lie, I would always say it daily of, why is this coming to me? Any staff sergeant can make this decision. Well, the staff sergeant didn't feel comfortable making the decision because they didn't want to be held responsible. So they pushed it to the tech, who pushed it to the master, who pushed it from the colonel all the way up. I'm going, oh my Lord, we need to fix this. And it's not an easy, transition. And so Colin Powell once said that the United States military is like a ship. It's not like an aircraft. And if you've ever been on a big, man of war ship, it turns in a pretty large arc, as opposed to an aircraft which can turn, instantaneously. So it took us a while to get to this risk aversion point. It's going to take us a while to get back. But if we start today, and it takes 365 days, then the 365 days from today, we're back to where we need to be. If we just say, well, it's too hard, we'll push it up to tomorrow. Now it's 366 days, 367 days, 700 days, 800 days, 10 years later, we haven't fixed where we are. Take a look around the globe. I don't know if we have 10 years to fix who we are. And we have been lucky. We in the Air Force, and to a degree, the Navy have been lucky. We have not been challenged on the battlefield. No one has challenged us for control of the air. No one has challenged the U.S. Navy for control of the seas. Our Army and Marine Corps brethren had a real fight on their hands and lost a lot in actual combat, which forced them to relook themselves, relook their NCO Corps, relook their leadership attributes, and they made significant changes. I'm not sure we have, because we haven't had to. I'm not saying we're not a professional force. I'm not saying, but that level of risk aversion is not healthy to who we are. It's not who we came from, and it's slowing down progress that we need to make if we're going to be ready to fight that next fight. If that next fight is a near peer competitor, we better be afraid, because we'll win, but we'll pay in blood, and none of us want to pay in blood. Because if we pay in blood, that means your wingman on your right and your wingman on the left might not be coming back. And we ought to make sure that when we go to combat, we bring everyone home, or as close to possible everyone home. And if we don't go on with that mentality, then shame on us. And in a fight against a country like a China, assuming we ever had to get to that fight, numbers matter, and we're in a world of hurt. Look at the history of the Korean War. They would actually send human waves of troops that didn't have rifles. But they knew someone would get killed and they'd pick up their rifle. And they were willing to accept that loss of human life, and we would just run out of bullets. And they would ultimately overrun our positions by sheer mass. Now, that's ground combat. We shouldn't get there. The world has changed. But remember, what is our real goal? Which sometimes we forget to talk about. The goal of the United States military is to deter conflict, and only if deterrence fails, fight and win our nation's war. I see deterrence as we are so capable, we are so ready, we are so intimidating that no one in their right mind will be willing to pick a fight with us because they know they can't win. That's where we need to be, And as we degrade our capability, we open up the thought calculus in a potential enemy's mind that maybe they could fight and win, or stalemate us and achieve their objectives, as opposed to there's no way you can fight and win that fight, so don't even try it. That's where we need to be. We had been there. I think we've lost a little bit of that, and in the end, I think it's all about leadership. It's not about technology. Technology helps, but technology only in the right hands with the right people. History is replete with examples of a less, technologically advanced force, a less capable force winning because they formed themselves, they trained themselves, and they bonded, and they're able to win. I mean, it's the same on the football field, by the way. You can look at lots of teams and go, well, the team that had, I'm from New York City, so I'm a New York Giants fan by birth. And, my son and I were talking about trading, Odell Beckham, who's a very capable receiver. But the question, the conversation we wound up getting into is, Odell Beckham's a very capable receiver, but is he a team player? And are the Giants better off with a less capable receiver who's a team player than a very capable receiver who's not? And in the end, usually the team that's a more capable team wins, not the ones with the 1 or 2 All-Stars. Okay, so with that, let me stop talking. I don't know if there's questions or if there's...
Yes, sir, we got some questions.
Okay.
Sergeant Woods asks, culture is changing in our Air Force. Master sergeants are burning through the ranks quickly, some making it in 10 years. How can we continue to mentor them and prepare them for a senior NCO role when perhaps they have not had a whole lot of real-world adversity or dealt with personal issues? What is the best advice to help mentor them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, I'll go back to, experience matters, and times change. So when I was a younger troop, the average NCO was a staff sergeant for a much longer time before they came up for tech. Mm-hmm. And by the same, in the officer corps, it was the same with captains. You're a captain for a much longer time before you came up for major. And I always say, if you really want to understand where a unit is, talk to the staff sergeant and talk to the captains, because they're the ones that are sort of at the heart of the mission and see and feel it. So, but times have changed, and the other services were promoting sooner than that. And there's a point where you say, hey, experience is important, but at the same token, we need to make sure we're providing for our troops and giving them reason to stay and advance and additional money and capacity. We got to be wary of, well, let's go back to the good old days. So our timelines for promotion are our timelines for promotion. So the question then becomes is, at what degree of authority do you give to a rank? So maybe what we asked the master sergeant to do 10 years ago is not what we would ask a master sergeant to do today, because they have 10 years less experience. And not 10 years, but they have some degree less experience. We just need to change that of what needs to be done at what level. So I'll give you another very simple example. When I took command of a flying squadron, I own my own maintenance, 300 maintainers. I had a chief, but the chief was PCS, and I had a maintenance officer, but it's a brand new lieutenant, and I had 3 senior master sergeants. I call them the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse. One female and 2 males. And the very first day of command, they came in and asked me to change a part on an airplane, for my permission. I said, why are you asking me? Well, sir, you're the commander. I got that, I just had a ceremony, they gave me a flag and everything, it was really cool. Why are you asking me? Have you ever seen a pilot turn a wrench on an airplane? No, sir. I go, why? Now, they were thinking of all sorts of ingenious answers. I said, I'll tell you why. I'm not qualified. So here's the new rules. I'm going to fly 2 turn 2, 2 day sorties, 2 night sorties with a spare. You make every decision on maintenance. You come to me, need more money, manpower, or authorities, or anyone gets in your chili. Those are my jobs. You got the rest. Respect your decision on every single one of them. You're the maintenance experts. So here's the one caveat. If I ever see a senior master sergeant make a decision, a master sergeant should make, I'll fire you on the spot. See a master sergeant make a decision, a tech sergeant should make, I want them fired on the spot. I'm pushing my authority to you. I expect you to push it down to the very lowest level, to let the most junior airmen make the decisions they could and should make. We will make mistakes. We'll learn from our mistakes. We'll become better, and we will move out into a fire. We had the highest maintenance rating of that airframe across the entire Air Force. And we just moved out into a fire, and then people ask how we do it. I go, I delegate. Yeah. I trust my people, and I'll let them do it. The question is, what is the decision that only a senior should make? What's the decision a master should make? I defer to the experts in those career fields, and it's probably different by career field. Mm-hmm. So, you know, those that are in that career field know better than anything else. And that's where we got to draw the smart lines and say, these are decisions that only a master sergeant should make. These are the ones that feel comfortable pushing to attack and then all the way down the line. And then look at individuals and say, you I give more responsibility to, because even though you're just a tech, I think you're capable of making these decisions. I authorize you to make these. We ought to be fluid enough to look at people and look at rank and then look right past it and say, who's got the capacity to make the right decisions at the right time with the right experience, knowledge, and training, and give them the authority and move.
Do y'all see why it's easy for me to work here at 2nd Air Force? So real quick, all that to say that the general is 100% honest as he sits here today and talks about empowerment of NCOs. And in fact, when I got in the seat, I asked him, hey boss, you know, what do you want me to focus on? And really what he wanted me to focus on is how do we get after empowering our NCOs back throughout 2nd Air Force. And so, sir, I know you've got to run, but thank you so much for the time and coming here to talk to this group, and also for feeding, you know, this group of, especially this is all the recruiting services that we're talking to, and they need to know the importance of who they're bringing in our Air Force and the bigger impact that it's going to have.
So I'll give you one last thing. I tell everyone this, my humble opinion. The biggest problem we have in the United States Air Force is communication. We don't communicate well up and down the chain of command, and we don't communicate honestly up and down the chain of command, and that will destroy us. So every one of us should say, no, I need to tell you what you need to know. I need to not sugarcoat it. We need to have these conversations. We need to force these conversations, and if we do that, then we'll make the smart decisions. I mean, just think about this. If every junior airman communicated effectively to the mid-level NCO, who communicated effectively to the senior NCO, who communicated effectively to the officer chain of command, all the way to the chief of staff of the Air Force, damn, we would make smart decisions. But instead, we sit here and we go, who the hell is making this decision? This makes no sense. Our senior leaders are bankrupt. They don't care about us. They don't give a damn. They have no moral authority. Or they don't know. Trust me, I sit at some of those meetings, they don't know. So it's really incumbent upon all of us to try to communicate honestly up and down that chain of command so we can have real, smart, actionable decisions. Man, what a smart Air Force we would be, as opposed to sitting there scratching our heads going, who thought that was a good idea? But I mean, that's a big organization. They all have those problems. But if we commit ourselves individually to having those conversations, I think we'd be much better off. So, thank you. Let me talk to you. Carry on, please.
Thank you.
All right. We got some questions coming in from the field right now too, man.
Well, we did good. We love it. So, wasn't that fun? Anyway, I thank y'all for allowing me to do an audible.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I think so. If we're gonna, listen to anything that I have to say when it comes to leadership, it's important to know that it's a leadership team, really, and air power is a team sport. So that's my wingman.
Very enlightening. He had a lot of good stuff to say.
I know it.
Stuff that we wanted him to say.
Good.
He said, so that was good. So go ahead. What questions you have?
Our very own top 3 vice president asked, since recruiters are the starting point for everyone entering the Air Force, what is the one thing you would like to see with all new airmen that show up?
So my other wingman, Chief Sonia Lee, good friend of mine from Germany, knows pretty strong. So, we've had a lot of conversations on how do we bring in the airmen we need. Somehow we've got to figure out how to get trainees into our Air Force who have the physical capacity and capability, mental resiliency, and the fortitude to be able to not just get into basic training or pass through MEPS, to be able to succeed well in BMT, succeed well in tech training, and then be an asset to the operational Air Force. And so with that said, so times have changed. And when you and I grew up, we were outside until the lights came on. and then we had to go home. So today's generation is not necessarily outside running, playing, climbing trees. We've got to get trainees who can physically do well in BMT. And so what we're finding is that we have folks who have never ran, you know, more than 2 blocks, and so they're struggling on day 2, 3, 4, and 5 in BMT, and that then puts the onus on our MTI, and then when they go to tech training, our MTL and instructor corps to figure out how to get these trainees and airmen who've never ran 1.5 miles to being able to do it and doing it well. And so we don't want broke airmen in BMT or tech training. We need them more physically fit. So if y'all can help us bring those kind of folks in, that's what we need.
Great answer, man. Thank you. One more. When sitting on a promotion board, in your opinion, what weighs the heaviest in elevating a board score, whether it's training, leadership, breadth of experience, PME, off-duty education, etc.?
Sure. So I don't think anything weighs the heaviest. They're all data points and they're all factors, operational experience as well. I think that the folks who are sitting on our promotion boards are smart enough to be able to look at a record, and don't misunderstand, it's not the person who promotes, it's your record that promotes. And so it's important that your record is accurate. It's important that the bullets that are on your evals are accurate and to depict you. So if you're, you know, especially an NCO, if you're an NCO, a senior NCO, you own that. You've got to be feeding, you know, the action and impact on what you've done. And so I don't think that there's one thing that weighs heavily. And every board member is an individual and they have things that are important to them. So is schooling and education important? It sure is. But then if you have a special ops airman who's spent most of their time downrange, do I look more favorably on the schooling or the ops experience? So it's a balance, and we take those in account. It's what you do with your experiences, what you do with that education, what you do with those operational experiences, and so on and so forth. So I don't think one weighs heavily. I think it's what you do. Some people don't have an opportunity to go outside of their career field and work a special duty, so I don't necessarily count that against them, what they do within their career field. But for those who do step outside of their career field, man, they've got to get some, I have to believe that they're getting an experience that makes them a better asset for our Air Force. So I tend to favor that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Nice. So we are talking to the top 3, right? So
Cool.
here's a question.
Yes.
As far as senior NCOs,
Mhm.
what can you say, not however many, can make us more effective NCOs for our day-to-day with our airmen?
Yeah.
So not a number, just however many.
However many what?
Like, what could we do to be more effective?
So I think you can be more effective. So how about this? What do I consider a strong senior non-commissioned officer?
That's it. Yeah.
Let me go from that piece. I think a strong senior non-commissioned officer is somebody who knows that they're still growing themselves, that they're not too proud to keep learning, that they surround themselves by a very strong tribe of people who make them be their best, that they are in line with the commander's priorities, that they are able to be a senior communicator on those priorities to their airmen. And when I say senior communicator, you know, my boss was talking about, I think you need to be able to message what our senior leadership is trying to get after to your airmen, and you that's written and verbally, and I don't think we do that well. I think sometimes we hit the easy button on communication. I often see people just hit forward and they don't do anything else. No, as senior leaders, we have to re-message to the lowest level airmen what our senior leaders are saying. And so I think those are characteristics of strong senior NCOs. I think a strong senior NCO is also somebody who has the welfare of the organization and their airmen in the front of their mind, and their own personal gain and promotion in the back of their mind. because as a senior NCO, it's not about you anymore. As a senior NCO, it's about, again, the organization, your airmen. What you have to count on as a senior NCO are that your chiefs are taking care of you. And so I count on my chiefs to take care of the senior NCOs. The senior NCOs ought to be taking care of the NCOs, and the NCOs ought to be taking care of the airmen.
Got it. So let's piggyback off what your boss said, off
Yes.
of General. He said something about changing the mindset, making the decisions at the lowest
Yeah,
level.
yeah.
How would what are some steps we could do as senior NCOs to get to that?
So, I mentioned to y'all that I spent the last 2 years up at the Pentagon. I heard it all the time from our most senior leaders. I heard it from the Secretary, from General Goldfein, don't wait on us, move out, revitalizing the squadron, empowering commanders to be able to make those decisions. General Goldfein talked to the wing commanders and said, hey, you should only be focused on the decisions you can focus on, which goes to the point of my boss where he said, let's empower people. So the message is being said at the most senior levels. I think that the message is being said at our most junior levels too. I think our airmen are getting, hey, get after this and do this. What I think we're struggling with is a communication in the middle, because I think that there's a whole lot of the middle that hasn't fully grasped that concept of empowerment and being able to push things down to the most lowest level. I think we did when I first came in the Air Force. I do. I think as my boss said, we've drifted away and we've become risk averse. We just have to do it. There's not a in order here's how to get after becoming an Air Force that empowers people again. We just have to do it. As senior NCOs, when we hear our most senior leaders telling us, hey, we believe in revitalizing the squadron, which means that our leaders know that the squadron is a heartbeat of our Air Force, and so the squadron has to be strong. That means everybody's doing what they're supposed to do at each of their levels. I think we just have to do it. When questions come my way, I'm always asking my teammates, hey, is this a question that I have to answer, or could you have answered? And most of the time they're like, Chief, we're sorry, we could have answered that. Just do it.
Yeah, it's perfect. So, last little thing, any last comments or word for advice for our future mentors or anybody like that? So our senior NCOs are top 3?
Yeah. So, I said it before, which is, as a senior NCO, you can't worry necessarily about you. As long as you're handling your business, as long as you're taking care of the team, as long as you're taking care of your bosses, your airmen and the mission, goodness is going to come your way. So there's a quote that I love, which is, success usually comes to those who are too busy to look for it. That is truth.
That is it.
I promise you, people, when people ask me, what were your keys to success and how did you become a chief? I don't have any, except that, I'd like to think that I worked hard. I'd like to think that I got after it and that I didn't worry so much about the stripes that I had, although it feels good, and although you get a pay raise, that's nice. But the more stripes you have, the more responsibility that you have comes a responsibility to use them well. And so with all the promotions that you're going to get, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? It means that I now have a responsibility. So if I'm in NCOIC of a section, that's my area of operation. That's what I have control of. And so I'll impact that as you grow. And now you're a master sergeant of a flight. You have responsibilities to that flight. As you become a squadron superintendent, now that squadron is your responsibilities. And so I would just say, bloom where you're planted, focus on that, and allow others to see the potential leadership abilities in you, and you'll continue to move forward and succeed.
Absolutely. Great advice. So do you want to plug your Facebook page as far as the @?
I do. Yeah. So at 2nd Air Force Command Chief, make sure you hit me up. I always try to throw some leadership nuggets. Sometimes there's lesson learned from me, or sometimes people throw stuff my way, and I love to share those things. Do we have any questions? Are we done?
One last question,
okay,
ma'am.
Very good.
Leadership is a learning process, one that is never perfectly achieved. What do you use to ensure you're constantly evolving and learning from your position?
That's good. So, I will tell you, I mean, so leadership is a journey and a growth. As a young senior airman, I for real thought I knew it all. I'll never forget, you know, you feel like you know it all, and then you're looking at your NCOs like, man, they don't know what they're talking about. As I've grown as a leader, and as I've become them, I've realized, man, I don't know hardly anything, you know, so I've got to get on it. So I keep myself sharp by being humble enough to know that I don't know it all. How will I know it all? By getting out there and talking to airmen and the troops that we have to find out, hey, what's the ground truth here? That's part of the learning piece. The other piece is I have to read, and sometimes, you know, that's actually reading books and magazines, or I'm listening to podcasts all the time. So I listen to 2 podcasts a day. They're always very short ones, less than 20 minutes. I do that while I'm getting ready. Again, part of my battle rhythm. What do I do to stay on point? 2 podcasts a day, and then in the evenings I get in some reading, because you can always learn from somebody. And again, it's been a journey and an evolution. I'm not somebody who loved to read before, you know. I like to watch HGTV and Food Network, and so that's what I prefer to do. But I know that I've got to stay on point, and so I've got to read to continue being a lifelong learner. And then I'm also, you know, trying to be a relevant Air Force leader. And so with that, I'm reading, hey, what are the things that our Chief of Staff is pushing out, that the Chief Master in the Air Force is putting out, our Secretary of the Air Force. So I'm always reading the emails that they're sending forth, and all the way from my chain of command at the Major Command to my numbered Air Force, what is on the hearts and minds of our leaders, and that keeps me on point. It's challenging to be on point as a senior NCO with all the dynamic changes that are going on in our Air Force, but again, when you keep good teammates around you and you don't know as a senior NCO, you know you have a tribe where you can reach out and connect through your phone and say, hey, has anybody heard of this new change going on with promotions or uniforms? And that's how you stay on point.
All righty. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for your time, ma'am. I know you're busy. And once again, everybody listening, it's not on Facebook. The top 3, the recruiting service top 3, you can put it in the search bar and follow the page. All righty. Well, thank y'all.
Awesome.
All righty. You have one last thing to say, ma'am?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. My last post was on coffee and how coffee makes everything right. So we have our 2nd Air Force coffee cups right here. But anyway, no, thank you to all the recruiters out there. What you do for 2nd Air Force is pretty phenomenal. In fact, I can't let y'all go anywhere yet. Hold on just one second. So I got a email from Chief Daigle, who said, hey, can you recognize my 2 superstars that are here? But what Chief Daigle doesn't know is that I would have recognized you guys anyway. So I can't recognize all of the recruiters that are out there. I wish I could, because the reality is your mission and what you do directly feeds into what we do at 2nd Air Force. And so for that, I thank you guys a ton, and I will give my thanks and congratulations to your teammates that are here with me now. So Sergeant Stevens, thanks so much. Sergeant G, thank you so very much. And thanks for what y'all do. We can't do this alone, so we're stronger and better together.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Cool.
Drink 2nd Air Force coffee.
Cool, yeah.
All right. Thank y'all.